Thanks for joining me online. Welcome to Kevin Talks Tech, making technology simple, easy, and fun to understand. So today I want to take a moment and talk about HDMI cables. These cables have become increasingly popular in homes. You probably have one right now hooked up between your television set to your cable box, maybe from your DVD player back to your TV. The HDMI cables really transform things. But even still today, with this being around as much as it is, there's still some misunderstandings about the HDMI cable. And today I want to clarify that with three main points about HDMI. The first main point I want to talk about is length. And when it comes to HDMI, yes, cable length does matter. Experts generally recommend you don't want to go past 50 feet in length because you risk losing your picture. There could be some interference that comes up along the way. So generally you want to stay under that 50 feet. If it's me, I probably wouldn't even go as long as 50 feet. The reason why this works this way is because HDMI is a little bit different than analog. With an HDMI cable, it's essentially all or nothing. The signal, as it moves from one end of the cable to the other, is going to consistently give you a good picture on the screen, even if the signal is progressively getting weaker as it works its way down the line. But at a certain point, once there pretty much is no signal left, or the signal is essentially too weak, the picture is simply going to drop out. Now compare that with analog, where as the signal moves down that longer cable, it gets progressively weaker and weaker and weaker. And you'll notice that on your television set as you look at the picture. But again, with HDMI, it's all or nothing. Even with a weak signal, the picture is still going to look great, but then suddenly it's just going to completely drop off. So you do want to make sure that you're not going too long with the HDMI cable. And generally you can find those in stores or online right around that 6 to 10 foot range. Now, let's talk about a second part of HDMI, and that is cost. Now, there is kind of this misconception that you have to have a big, expensive HDMI cable to get a great picture on your screen, and quite frankly, that's simply not the case. The picture is digital, so the picture is going to look just as good with your cheap $7 to $10 HDMI cable as it is with your $60 to $70 HDMI cable. It's going to be just fine. So I recommend going out there, finding one of the cheaper HDMI cables that you can. They're so easy to find online. They're easier now to find in store than they were before. I've seen them at places like Best Buy, Walmart, Target for $7 to $10, sometimes even in a pack of 2, which is a really nice deal. The one thing you might just want to use a little bit of caution about perhaps is just the overall build of the cable, and that is specifically the connectors at the ends of the cable. If you are going to be buying online, perhaps maybe just read some reviews about the cable. You want to make sure that those connectors are strong. You want to make sure that they're not too heavy as to put too much weight on the cable. So just read those reviews and pay special attention to the connectors to see what people are saying about that. Number 3, let's talk about gold versus non-gold. So there is kind of this thought out there that if you've got a gold HDMI cable, perhaps that's the upper echelon of HDMI cables. And quite frankly, that's not really so much the case. Again, we're dealing with the digital picture here. It's going to look great on any kind of HDMI cable you use. But the one thing that does set gold HDMI cables apart from non-gold HDMI cables is that gold does not corrode as easily as some of the other HDMI cables that you might be using that are non-gold, perhaps. It's not a huge problem. It's actually something that I've really never encountered when using HDMI cables. I've had non-gold HDMI cables for the better part of 8 to 10 years and haven't noticed that corrosion. But it is certainly possible and more likely for that HDMI cable to corrode if it's non-gold. But at the same time too, these HDMI cables these days are so cheap. Again, I mentioned sometimes $7 to $10. So even if you get 5 to 6 years out of a cable, that might just set you back another $7 in another 5 or 6 years. Not really too big of a deal. And, you know, with technology changing the way it does, putting so much money into one cable might really not be the best idea, because who knows when technology is going to change again. Right now, they're working on a new kind of HDMI cable for 8K streaming. And obviously, we're nowhere near that right now, going down that line. But I'm just always one who doesn't put a ton of money into one thing when it comes to technology, because by tomorrow, things can always change. Hopefully that helps clear up some common questions you might have about HDMI. I wanted to get those few things out there. If you need any more information about this, I found a number of great resources with a lot of knowledgeable people who weighed in on this particular subject, and I've posted their links on my website. Just head to kevintalkstech.com to see those. And if you haven't done so already, please click the subscribe button at the top of my page. That will give you all of my latest videos, and don't forget the bell icon as well, so that way you get notified when I post a new video. Thanks again for joining me today. Have a great day.